This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. As the days get shorter and colder, it can really take a toll on how we feel. Maybe that means calling your grandma, writing a letter to your friend, finally grabbing lunch with someone you haven't seen in a while. And just like reaching out to a friend, starting therapy can take a bit of courage. BetterHelp makes it easy to start therapy. You'll be matched with a licensed therapist based on your needs and preferences so you can focus on your growth and goals. Not happy with your match? You can switch therapists anytime with no hassle. This month, don't wait to reach out, whether that's checking in on a friend or reaching out to a therapist yourself. BetterHelp makes it easier to take that first step. And our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/PFF. That's betterhelp.com/PFF.
The Giants and the Bears. We got to get to this one because, well, one, it's on the schedule. We got to talk about it. But two, we got some news. And before we get to the news, let's talk about the top 5 graded players because I don't want to take anything away from the Chicago Bears, who did come back and win this game. Top 5 graded players that we had for the Bears. Offensive guard Jonah Jackson at the top of the list with an 87.7. Wide receiver Luther Burden III at 78.9. Defensive tackle Andrew Billings at 75.8. Safety Jaquan Brisker with 74.8. Wide receiver Romo Dunze getting back in the saddle with a 73.6. Caleb Williams, another good game from Caleb Williams, 81.1. On the Giants side of things, their offensive tackle Andrew Thomas at the top of the list, an 89.7. Wide receiver Darius Slayton, who had catch of the day, catch of the week, maybe, with the one-handed grab, 85.1. Tight end Theo Johnson at 75.5. Offensive tackle Jermaine Illuminor with a 70.3. And then defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence, a 65.8. Jackson Dart in this game, he's 71.2, but we'll get to it. It left this game with a concussion. And that'll sort of be a talking point here as we sort of talk about the breaking news here from the New York Giants side of things, and that is Brian Daboll is out as head coach. I think that this also probably spells the end for Joe Schoen as well, the general manager, because I think both of those guys were on the chopping block or on the hot seat going into the year. Didn't have the year that they wanted to the previous season. John Mara, we saw in the behind-the-scenes stuff as well as I think after the season when he was sort of addressing the media that it wasn't fun for him to watch Saquon Barkley go to another team and basically be a reason why the Eagles had as good of a year as they did and then had the Super Bowl win after that. It probably doesn't make it much easier looking at Daniel Jones and seeing the success that he is now having with the Indianapolis Colts, knowing that that guy was in the building for the last 4 years. Now, I'm not saying that it's a one-on-one comparison because it's not. But all things considered, when your coach and GM are already on the hot seat, your franchise player, beloved by the fan base, goes to your rival and helps them win a Super Bowl. And then the quarterback that you had that you drafted that was in the building, who you did have one similar year with in 2022, weren't able to replicate that. I think all of those things, as well as the collapse that we had yesterday, allowing the Bears to come back and win that game, was the straw that broke the camel's back, as the saying goes. So just some thoughts on Brian Daboll being fired and then maybe some potential head coach candidates, where you want this team to go from here?
I think this Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones bit, there's a different perspective that I have on it when it comes to letting those guys go and them having success elsewhere. It's not the fact that, those guys left and they were better football players and you just let them go, right? And you just didn't know talent, right? It's not that they didn't know they were good football players. It was that their team was not built in a way where those two guys could succeed, right? And to an extent, it still isn't. It's a very shaky offensive line at times, better since Andrew Thomas has gotten healthy. Without Malik Neighbors, I mean, you look at the injuries, right? Without Malik Neighbors, there's nothing reliable in the receiving core. Without Cam Scatterbo, there's a big drop-off to Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary, right? And Jackson Dart's really your best rusher. Now, even within this game, Jackson Dart gets hurt. You have a 10-point lead. Russell Wilson comes in, and everything just shuts down, and they blow a 10-point lead basically instantly because they have no ability to throw the football or for their offense to function without Jackson Dart and the design rushing and everything that goes into that. So I really think it comes out, and that's why it's a good question about Joe Schoen now as their GM, because for 4 years now, they just haven't built this team right. Even when they made the playoffs in 2022, we had them as one of the lowest graded teams in football. They were squeaking by, winning close games. It was a grinding sort of game where the run game was dominating. They were trying to do that again this year before Cam Scatterbo, and now Jackson Dart got hurt again. But I think you just have an element. And look, this shouldn't come as to us as much of a surprise, because John Mara said well before the season, there's kind of a semi-mandate here to win at least some games.
Right.
And they're what now? Is it
2-8?
2-8 now? I mean, they're looking at a top 5 pick in the draft again. Now, that'll help them, obviously, whether they want to go offensive line or wide receiver to get a number 2 receiver in there or something like that, or maybe a Caleb Downs in the secondary. Who knows? But I think you just look at this team and you look at them on the whole, and their defense should be a lot better considering the names they had. They did not play well at all in this game, especially up front. They just haven't built this team right, especially the last 3 years, and that's what this comes down to.
Yeah, I agree. And when you look at the drafts, Shane, what was his first year? 2022, I think, as a general manager. Yeah, he started in 2022. That 2022 class was it's harsher on him now in hindsight because the start of that draft was, remember, they had 2 picks in the top 7. They went Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal.
And neither one's panned out the way Neal's not even starting. Right. And Thibodeau is, this year he's been okay, but Thibodeau's never been the guy that with the wicked potential they thought he'd be with that pick.
And it's I don't want to say it's unfair to do this because this is the game. Like that, it's fair because it's part of the game, but it's hard to look at Hutchinson in that class as well and be like, man, I know he's picked after him, but it's hard to be like, man, like these 2 guys were right up there in the conversation, and Kayvon just has not lived up to that, what you've needed him to. And I don't want to go too hindsight with that because I do think the Thibodeau has been good, but the Neal one was a really bad pick. That's tough on him. Wandale is still around. The next year was tough. Deontay Banks is not great. John Michael Schmitz is starting caliber player for them, but like Jalen Hyatt after that has not worked out well with those guys were picked in the top 3 rounds. Malik Neighbors in the first round in 2024. You love that. Tyler Newman. I still have faith in Tyler Newman. I really like Andrew Phillips. I like Theo Jackson. I like Tyrone Tracy. So I don't mind that 2024 class. And then when you look at this class, Abdul Carter. Now we'll talk about him in a second. Jackson Dart. Okay, you feel like you got a franchise quarterback there that you got at the back of the first round. You feel good about that. I like Darius Alexander. I like Cam Scatterbo. So these last 2 drafts I've felt a lot better than the earlier drafts when it came to Joe Schoen. So that's why it's like, man, is he hitting his stride as a general manager? Or I don't know, but it's hard for me to not think that these 2 guys were married with each other and when the time
There's a position group right there that sticks out to me, and it's 2 guys you mentioned, the offensive linemen. Again, Neal is not starting, and Schmitz, since he's been in, is one of the lowest graded centers in the league in the couple of years that he's played now. So I think that really is what it comes down to. On top of, you stack that with all the Andrew Thomas injuries they've had over the years, they've never been able to stabilize this offensive line. And I think that's really the biggest thing when you just want to look at a specific on-field thing. But no, I mean, it's tough. But there was a mandate coming into this year. I don't know what the number may have been, but certainly it wasn't 2-8. And especially in a game like this where, again, Jackson Dart gets hurt and everything just falls apart. You lose the double-digit lead. That's tough. And they've been in some close games. I mean, you think about what if they had won the Denver game? Would he have been fired if they had finished that game off, too, with such, 26-0 lead they had in that game? So I think you're just looking at a situation where you have leadership in the organization just tired of losing at this point. It's been 3 years in a row of this.
I wonder if the true last straw was Dart getting his 4th concussion, being in concussion protocol for the 4th time, and he's only a rookie this year. I mean, is it basically just like, hey, man, you're 2-8, and now you're putting a guy who could be a franchise quarterback for us in danger? I wonder if that's good. Because there's, real quick, I want to get your thoughts on head coaching candidates, but I think some people might look at head coaching candidates and say, like, well, why don't you get somebody who can utilize the rushing ability of Jackson Dart? And it's like, okay, like, yeah, that's good in theory, but the guy's already got 4 concussions. Like, you almost need somebody who's going to make him more of a pocket passer.
I mean, the problem is this happened in part because Malik Neighbors is out for the year, and they just have to run the football to succeed, right? And he is a big part of that. Even just the threat of Jackson Dart running the ball is a big part of their offense. But you're right. You have to pick your spots with it, right? We've seen this with other quarterbacks in the past.
I just wonder how much that's going to be a factor with the candidates they have.
I don't think you can take it completely away, though.
No. I don't.
He's an athlete, and he's a competitor, and he's going to compete.
But I feel as though people are going to. They're going to suggest candidates who are going to be like, yeah, let's get a dual threat offense in here. And I wonder if Mara's like, dude, he's already got 4 concussions.
You got to pick the best coach for his development in general anyway, and for the team. I mean, 3 guys pop into my head right now. We'll see. Maybe Joe Schoen picks back at his old organization, the same old spot that he got with Dable, and goes to the Bills' offensive coordinator, Joe Brady. Mm-hmm. That's one that sticks out to me. Number 2, now I'm going to go to the college level for 2 of them, all right? One, they're maybe a little crazy, but I don't know if they're that out of the...
Well, I know one of them.
You know one of them, and you're going to hate it, but Go down to Ole Miss and talk to Lane Kiffin, get him back with Jackson Dart. I still wonder, for as much as has been talked about the LSU and Florida jobs and all this, if Lane Kiffin would take one more crack at the NFL. I don't know. I got nothing that says that he would. I have no official any word on that or anything. But I do wonder if he would take one more shot. The third one, and it's not a great year for him this year because he's probably just not a college coach. But what about Bill Belichick? Would Bill Belichick would it be the one and done at Carolina like some people think?
No, he's not coming back to the NFL.
Would the Giants? I almost think the Giants would be the one team that he would come back to and that might actually take him back, considering that's where it all started back in the day.
No, that's not happening.
Because it ain't working at Carolina.
No, Bill Belichick's not getting a head coaching job in the NFL again.
I think this is the one team where he might.
The one candidate that I have that I love so far that's just sort of at the top of my head is Clint Kubiak. Now, I have no idea what Clint Kubiak is like when you interview him for a head coaching spot, because we talk about it all the time. Being a head coach is different than being a coordinator. Being a head coach is a lot different than a play caller. You have to be a different type of leader to be a head coach in the NFL. So I don't know if he passes those tests with flying colors or what, but the Saints offense last year, all things considered, was decent. What he's doing this year with the Seattle Seahawks, and we'll get to the Seahawks later this show, coordinator of the year, assistant coach of the year. Like, he's just been unbelievable at what he's been able to do with Sam Darnold, with that whole offense, and that's the sort of like vision that you would want to have for an offensive guy like that as the head coach to really improve the development of Jackson Dart. So anyways, let's get back to this game specifically. I wanted to touch on that, but stat that told the story for me in this game, Bears run game. 2 weeks in a row, really good. Monungai, Swift, Caleb Williams, all over 4.0 yards per carry. 52.8 impact run blocking percentage, which we talked about this last week for Chicago. An impact run blocking play is where you get a positive grade on a run blocking play. So that means that 52.8% of the time, the team as a whole was earning a positive. So not just like a neutral, you do your job. It's not a positive and a negative, just to let you guys know. A lot of times it's neutral grades, like, okay, you did your job on this play. More than half of the time, they're not only gaining a neutral grade, they're gaining a positive play that they made a difference, that they went above and beyond with their impact and execution on that play. Their two highest single-week impact run blocking scores have come within the last 2 weeks. So Ben Johnson is getting the run game going in Chicago, and I think that goes hand in hand with two really good Caleb Williams weeks as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, their run game's been going pretty solid for about a month now, and this offensive line has really started to gel well. I mean, it's odd, obviously without Braxton Jones at left tackle, but Theo Benedette's been good enough at that spot. Jonah Jackson was outstanding in this game. Drew Dahlman was always a perfect fit in the system, just took some time to get used to the new guys and the new environment, and Darnell Wright is obviously the star of the show as well there in Chicago. So their offensive line has been good, and you're right, it does allow Caleb to not have to carry them except for, in big moments. The last drive against the Bengals last week, the fourth quarter in this game, he doesn't have to carry it through the entire four quarters because DeAndre Swift is running well behind this line. Kyle Monungai's played a big part, and Caleb Williams, his legs himself, whether it's scrambling or as an occasional bootleg threat, read option, things like that, Caleb's legs are also a threat, and he's been really dangerous outside the pocket. Actually, I wanted to highlight that as my most impressive, because when you look at Caleb Williams in this game on design rollouts or scrambles, 5 for 11, 47 yards, 2 big time throws, but there were 3 of those incompletions that were dropped. His stat line in this game could have looked a lot better. The Bears dropped 7 passes. Caleb was really on target in this game. He was outstanding. 86.4 PFF grade outside the pocket, 5 scrambles, 64 yards, the game-winning touchdown at the end. I think that's what you're getting now with Ben Johnson in this offense, is he's going, man, if I get this kid on the move, this can be nasty, because especially rolling to his right, a couple of the throws he made rolling to his right were just unbelievable. He's got that. It's that same thing I think about when Josh Allen rolls to his right. Look out. Start praying if you're a defense, because you're going to have a real problem. Caleb Williams is the same way. So I thought he was really good in this game when he had to be. And I think this was a good game kind of because, there's a lot of people that have questioned his mental toughness, right? And it's snowing. They're down 20-10. Guys are dropping balls. Everything looks ugly. And he just finds a way in the fourth quarter to win this game. He deserves a lot of credit here.
Yeah, no, Caleb was good, again, for another game. And I think that it's worth pointing out. Most impressive to me, I don't know if this was the most impressive player in the field, but I think that Ben Johnson's offense is just looking better and better, and it's more confident in a lot of ways. And Colston Loveland is another one of those ways. He had a nice game last week, a breakout game, but in this game as well, not just the receiving, but the blocking. I'm watching him in line. He is so much more confident as a blocker right now than he was earlier in the season. So even though the stats aren't, jumping out at you this week like they did last week, and even the blocking grades, like they're okay. They're right around neutral. Like I'm just watching him in and out there, and the blocking looks different. It looks more confident from him, where I think we're going to start to see a lot more weekly scores where he's either at average, which, by the way, good time to remind you, 60.0 would be average. I think he's either going to be at that average mark or slightly above it for the games that we're going to get throughout the rest of the season.
And he's healthy, too, which is big. He was dealing with, I believe it was a hip injury earlier in the year. Now that he looks like he's 100%, got involved in the passing game last week. And Ben Johnson, he wants to live in that 12 personnel with Cole Kmet, with Colston Loveland. That was the entire idea of putting those two guys together. They're so different. You can use Loveland in so many different roles that he can be a great player for you in the right scheme. Now he's healthy, like you mentioned, looking confident. You like how he looks at that as that two-way impact guy.